Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I'm here to do yet another unhaul. I'll be honest with you, taking that thumbnail took enough effort that I just kind of want to lay down a nap instead of doing this video. So, I am getting rid of more books. I don't know what happened. So last summer, I really started, getting rid of books en masse, which is something that I hadn't done before, and it felt so freeing to get rid of books that I kind of didn't care about. And now because of that, every time I get back to these shelves, I look at them and I go, you know what, there are books on there that I don't care about anymore, and I want to make more room, and so I have yet another huge stack of books that I want to get rid of. And some of these are going to be controversial. So let's just jump into it, and I'll tell you about all of the books that I'm getting rid of this time. I'm trying to decide if I should go coffee table books, standalone series. Yeah, we're gonna end on series, and we're gonna start on coffee table books. So I have 3 coffee table books I am getting rid of. The first of those is the Sherlock Chronicles. I'm getting rid of this, which is all about the content of, the BBC show Sherlock, because the 4th season of Sherlock, it was bad enough that it pissed me off, and it's made me, angry for months at a time, and I've honestly just been slowly getting rid of most of the Sherlock stuff that I own, and this is heavy and big, and I really have lost all respect for the show and its creators, so time to get rid of this. I also have 2 Harry Potter coffee table books that I'm getting rid of, but it's not because I didn't like them or I don't want to read them. So the books we have are the Unofficial Harry Potter Cookbook and Harry Potter the Creature Vault, and the reason I'm getting rid of both of these is because Janelle already owns them, and we really don't need 2 copies of both of these books. So, as much as I really like both of these and the look and the content of both of them, I technically already own copies, so out they go. Now I have 6 standalone books I'm going to talk about. The first of those is Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. I don't know what it was that finally prompted me to get rid of this book. I did enjoy it when I read it, but I've had no interest in rereading it, and I don't know, it just hasn't stuck with me. I've read more David Levithan at this point, and I think that they're either much better than this or much worse than this, and it falls kind of in the middle. I don't really love John Green as much as I used to, so this just felt unnecessary to keep in my collection. This is a weird one. I'm also getting rid of The Girl Who Was on Fire. This is edited by Leah Wilson, and it's a collection of essays about the Hunger Games. I read a lot of books about books. I think it's the English major within me, or I guess the English degree within me? I don't know how to phrase it anymore. Anyway, this is kind of old. It had some YA authors that were big when it came out, like Carrie Ryan, Ned Vizzini, Sarah Reese Brennan. This had some good people when it first came out, but I'm not as passionate about the Hunger Games as I used to be, and I don't think that I'll reread this because it was really interesting when I read it, but I don't think I'm ever going to go back to some of the essays and some of the content that was in here. Although they were interesting. They were basically just academic essays about certain aspects of the Hunger Games. So I would still recommend this because there's a lot that's good in here about politics, and I don't know. There was a lot of good in here. I'm just not going to reread it, so I'm getting rid of it. So it's going to hurt me a little bit. So I'm getting rid of Igraine the Brave by Cornelia Funk, or Funke, or I'll never get it. So, Cornelia Funk is one of my all-time favorite authors, and she was my favorite author for a lot of years. I own a ton of her books. This just happens to be my least favorite of them all. When I read it, I was kind of unimpressed with it, and I've only kept it because she is one of my favorite authors, but I'd rather just keep around, the Inkworld series, or The Thief Lord, or Dragon Rider, or Reckless. I have so many others by her that I love, so I'm gonna get rid of this one, which is one of my least favorites. It is about a girl who's a knight, but it's also leans much more towards, it's middle grade, and it leans towards the young scale of that. So I'm going to get rid of it. Also, we have Immortal Song by Megan Crew. This was a indie published book that the author sent along. I read it and reviewed it back in January, and I liked it, but not enough to keep in my collection. Also have It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. Weirdly, he also had an essay in the world of the Hunger Games, or whatever that was. So this book, I read it years ago, and I really liked it then, and it has come up more and more in recent years, the fact that this book has some really harmful stuff to say, not just about depression, but also about, there's a trans character in this that's played really terribly. There's there's a lot in here that's apparently really harmful. And I've just decided with time that I don't want really harmful books on my shelves. That's why I'm getting rid of a few more that I have down here. So while I got a lot out of this when I was much younger, I just don't think that it's ever a book I'll revisit, because I think when I revisit it, I will, with my more critical eye, notice a lot more of those things. And the last standalone that I'm getting rid of is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. It's possible I'll just be handing this off to my sister because she read it and really liked it, but I'm not sure yet. I read this when I very first started BookTube, and really, if we go back to 2 years ago when I started my BookTube, there are a lot of books I read then that I liked that I know for a fact I wouldn't enjoy now, and this is one of them. Mostly because I don't really like reading from the point of view usually of teenage boys who are really hardcore teenage boy, like, they're just really disgusting for no reason, and this also says, like, some weird stuff for no reason against bisexuals halfway through, and I just, like, it was funny, I think, when I originally read it, but I watched the movie, and I liked the movie, like, 1,000% more than I liked this book, so I don't know why I'm keeping it around. Honestly, I could go back to so many books I read 2 years ago, and I probably wouldn't like them at all anymore. This is one of them. Goodbye. I think it's time to get into some series. I have a lot of them. Let's start small. 2 books in a series. I'm getting rid of books 1 and 2 of the Unwind Dystology by Neal Shusterman. This is another one of those things that I read like early on in high school that I loved when I was really early in high school, but I definitely know I wouldn't enjoy anymore. I love so many of Neal Shusterman's books. I've read a ton of them at this point, and I have been pretending I'm going to finish this series for like 6 years. 6 years I've been pretending I'm going to pick up the next 2, and it's never going to happen. These were fun in days of dystopian love past, but that's just no longer where I am. And I will keep my other Neal Shusterman books, and I will treasure those instead. I'm also getting rid of a series that probably none of you have ever heard of, and that is the Hourglass Door trilogy. This is a trilogy by Lisa Mangum, including the Hourglass Door, The Golden Spiral, and The Forgotten Locket. They're like a fantasy time travel series, which my friends and I all read together when we were in high school, but like again, I've just like grown past them. And I mean, I still would recommend these. They're just not really my style of book, but there's like, you know, sexy Italian guy moves in, he's the new guy in school, and the main girl is falling for him even though he's mysterious. It's that kind of story, which I'm just not into. I remember the romance being great and the friendship being great, but I'm never gonna reread these. We should do a big one now. I'm getting rid of all of my James Dashner books. There are 2 series connected with this. That's books 1, 2, and 3 of the Maze Runner series, and also books 1 through 4 of the 13th Reality. So, the 13th Reality is a middle grade series, not YA, that I started reading when I was really, really young, and actually, I only finished the 4th one last year, I think. The last one was a huge disappointment, and I could never figure out if it was just that it had been so many years since I'd originally read the series that I was just waking up to realize that it wasn't good, or if it was just a really sloppy conclusion because James Dashner has gone on to write a much bigger series after this. But as much as I really liked the original books when I was younger, I hated the last one, and I'm never going to reread them. And the same kind of goes for the Maze Runner series. So this was originally a trilogy. I read all 3. When The Death Here came out, I went to a release party with my friend. We were like obsessively reading them together, and I really respect them for those moments, but I don't really care about them anymore. I remember being really disappointed by the final book. I guess it's not the final book. I remember being really disappointed by The Death Cure when we thought this was the final book. Now there are like 4 more or something. And again, Days of Dystopian Past. I enjoyed these when I was really into dystopians, but they're just not my thing anymore. Next up, we have a duology, and that is Eon and Iona. Now, you may notice I have a bookmark in Iona. I'm currently reading it. And you may remember the fact that when I originally read Eon, I actually quite liked it. So here's the thing. Here's why I'm getting rid of these books. I am a little over 100 pages into Iona, and it's opening my eyes to a lot of things that I kind of noticed when I was reading Eon that were really big problems, but they weren't focused on as much, and in Iona they're becoming huge problems that really aren't being addressed correctly. And I guess, so the things are ableism, There's some pretty dramatic ableist stuff happening in here that I don't want to talk about because it spoils the end of the first book. But then there's also a trans character that I really don't think is being handled well at all. And the more and more those problems come up in Iona, the less respect I have for Eon. So I've decided once I finish Iona, because I do want to finish it, I want to find out what happens where it was going. Even when I finish it, I've decided I'm going to get rid of this duology because there's too much stuff in here that's handled far too poorly, and it's just making me really sad because I remember really enjoying Eon. 2 series left, and we're going to end on the one that I think is going to have the most controversy surrounding it. So before we get to that one, we're going to talk about the Gone series by Michael Grant. Now, much like It's Kind of a Funny Story, I read these when I was young. It was one of my favorite series, and I read it unquestioningly and uncritically because of the age I was when I read them. But as time has gone on, the author, as well as others reading these books, have pointed out to me the ways in which there are a lot of problems. So this is books 1, 2, 3, and 6, I think. Gone's the first book, then Hunger, then Lies, and then there are a couple more, and then Light is the final book. Now, when I was younger, I read these and I appreciated them for their diversity. There are multiple characters who are main characters who are both people of color and they're queer, and that was really exciting, and that was kind of the extent of me being excited about diversity when I was that age. But there's also an autistic character in this series who is frequently portrayed as a burden and as something that is wrong, and he has so much put on him. And then the author himself has made some really vile and terrible comments about that character on Twitter, and basically the author's like a terrible guy. Like, he said some of the most terrible things on Twitter that have made me lose all amount of respect for him. I don't want these on my shelves anymore. I don't want them as a reminder of the kind of person he is, of the kind of narrative that's in here about certain characters, and so sadly I'm going to be getting rid of this series. I really wish the author wasn't a terrible person, but he is. He's just a really terrible person. And the last series that I am getting rid of, drum roll, hope you're all ready for this, is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. So I own all currently released books in the Throne of Glass series. I started reading them again when I very first joined BookTube, and I really, really loved Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire, which are books 2 and 3. However, they continue to grow more terrible, and when I read Queen of Shadows, I read it in like this fugue of rage that lasted for months afterwards. I did like a 20-minute rant video about it like forever ago, if you want to go watch that. And after hearing stuff about Empire of Storms and the kind of stuff that continues to happen in Empire of Storms, I've just decided I'm never gonna finish the series. I have owned Empire of Storms. I pre-ordered Empire of Storms, which at the time that I pre-ordered it, I never pre-ordered books, and it's just been sitting on my shelves for months and months, and every time I think about picking it up, this dread ends up in my stomach because I'm like, ugh, it's gonna take me forever to push my way through that book because I didn't like Queen of Shadows at all. And you know what? I don't want to read these anymore. I don't want to read about the relationships that are being pushed in this. I just feel like books 2 and 3 offered so much character development, so much character interest. I was so into Heir of Fire. There were all of these characters going places that I thought were interesting and new and different, and then it's all just been completely destroyed. And I don't care about them anymore after that. I don't care about characters that I used to love and now are unrecognizable, and unrecognizable in character development that makes no sense to me. So yeah, I am getting rid of the 6 books of the Throne of Glass series that I own. So we have Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, and the prequel novellas, The Assassin's Blade. It's time for these to go. It is time for me to say goodbye and stop letting Empire of Storms stare at me day in and day out going, when are you gonna read me? And to have me just finally go, I'm not, is a huge relief. So there you go. Those are the 33, I think I just counted them, those 33 books that I'm going to be getting rid of this summer. Obviously, it has made a ton of room on the shelves behind me. I now get to have a special mug display shelf, which is thrilling me. And look at my little guys up in my Harry Potter section. They look great. I have room to grow on my shelves, and really, it's just a relief to say goodbye to all of these. So, yeah. I hope that you guys have enjoyed hearing my thoughts about all of these books and why I decided to get rid of them. I'm sorry, but I can't send any of these books to you. I wish that I could. I do have a few arcs that I'm going to be getting rid of, so if you want to keep up to date on arcs that I might be giving away, follow me on Twitter. That is generally where I will do my arc giveaways. Are there any of these books that you have also unhauled or that you read and you didn't enjoy? Let me know in comments below, or really any other thoughts that you have for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!